I'm sure everyone watching this video has seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 by now, but in case you haven't, I'm not only obliged to warn you of impending spoilers, but I'm also about to dive right into the mid-credits scene and dissect one of the new members of the Guardians team. Who is Phyla-Vell? What is the significance of her character in the MCU? I'm about to answer all of that and more, so let's get going. Now, before I just go spilling the beans by revealing why Phyla-Vell is so significant to the MCU,
and you're just telling me now?
And more specifically, phases 4 and 5, let us first teach ourselves, or for some, refresh our memories on who exactly Phyla-Vell is in the comics as well. In the books, Phyla-Vell, or simply Phyla, is part Titan and part Kree, which I want you to keep tucked away in the back of your mind for now as we roll along here. Phyla's father is the infamous genetically augmented Kree super soldier called Mar-Vell, the first character in Marvel Comics to don the moniker of Captain Marvel. Phyla at one point also becomes Captain Marvel, and so does her brother, Vell, but I'll continue to connect these dots as we move along. Phyla also became the second hero to take on the mantle of QUASAR, which is a really important fact to keep in mind, but I will circle back to that in a moment. Phyla would go on to become a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, key detail, and is currently known as Martyr, something that isn't important at all. See? There, I switched it up. Now, in the MCU, Phyla was recently just introduced during Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and is still only in her early teens. That being said, and just like in the comics, Phyla does end up joining the new Guardians team led by Rocket, as revealed in the mid-credits scene of the film. Unlike the comic books, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Phyla was created by the High Evolutionary along with the other Star Children to be a part of his utopian society. However, Phyla in the movies still seemingly possesses all of the same base powers as her comic book counterpart, with a genetically enhanced physiology and the ability to manipulate cosmic energy. The reason I bring up her powers is because Phyla becomes much more powerful in the comics once endowed with a couple of pieces of jewelry, and we are about to get into it in just a second, and I am predicting the same will happen in the MCU. And speaking of the MCU, all we know about that version of Phyla so far really is that she is very powerful and the Guardians rescued her. Remember a little while ago I brought up how at one point in the books, Phyla takes on the role of QUASAR? Well, the original QUASAR, formerly known as Marvel Boy, and boy are there a lot of people named Marvel tied up in all of this. That aside, QUASAR, or Wendell Vaughn, is a former military lieutenant and SHIELD Academy graduate who garnered cosmic powers after putting on the quantum bands. Quantum bands, quantum realm, quantum mania. You can start to see how this could align with the MCU by now, so allow me to indulge. The quantum bands are unique energy manipulating devices of incredible power that the cosmic being called Eon appointed to beings he deemed to be protectors of the universe. Although it has been speculated that Eon created the quantum bands himself, their true origins remain unknown. And although that is the case, we do know a little about the quantum bands, like the place they draw their energy from, called the quantum zone. Gotcha, no, not the quantum realm, the quantum zone. In the MCU, the quantum realm is the equivalent of the dimension known as the microverse in the comics. The reason for the name change in the flicks is due to Paramount owning the terms microverse because of the Micronauts or something like that, but that, my friends, is a whole other video for a whole other time. Circling back to the quantum zone, it's much different than the quantum realm in that it's the place where the entire Marvel Comics universe draws its energy and power from. Now, we haven't seen or heard of the quantum zone in the MCU, and if or when we do, it will probably be named something else entirely, or they'll just find a way to connect it to the quantum realm. But this could be a major key in the MCU moving forward because, as I mentioned earlier referring to the books, Phyla becomes the second iteration of QUASAR after Wendell Vaughn passes the quantum bands on to her. Speaking of teenage girls who have cosmic powers, were gifted extraterrestrial bracelets and use the word Marvel in their names. Who could I be talking about? In the MCU, Ms. Marvel is Kamala Khan, who, much like Phyla-Vell, was born with a set of base powers that have been or will be expanded upon with the use of alien wristbands. Now, in the comics, Kamala Khan is an Inhuman, and her bracelet, or bangle, is a gift from her grandmother. In the movies, or television series in this instance, Kamala's bangle was also gifted to her by her grandmother, but this one draws its powers from an obscure dimension called the Newer Dimension. The Newer Dimension is the MCU's version of the comics' Light Dimension, but there may be more to the bangle than we think. It was revealed during the Ms. Marvel series that Kamala's bangle has a matching counterpart hiding somewhere out in the galaxy. This has convinced many fans and YouTube channels like this one that Ms. Marvel's bangles in the television series are connected to, or just flat out will be, the NEGA-BANDS. This theory is reinforced due to Captain Marvel's connection with the Kree Empire and the fact that Ms. Marvel will be joining Carol Danvers, as well as Spectrum, in the upcoming Phase 5 movie The Marvels. In the comics, the Kree Empire created the NEGA-BANDS and awarded them to the first Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell, Phyla's father, who, like QUASAR, passed his artifacts on to the young woman. Did you catch that? Yes. Phyla has had possession of both the Quantum and NEGA-BANDS in her superhero tenure. In the MCU, Mar-Vell was actually a woman and Carol Danvers' mentor. Furthermore, she seemingly had no connection to Phyla whatsoever. Movie Mar-Vell did not have possession of the NEGA-BANDS either. However, she was a Kree scientist who empowered Carol. This only increases the likelihood that Kamala Khan's bangle in the MCU could be one half of the NEGA-BANDS. The Quantum Bands and NEGA-BANDS are similar in quite a few significant ways that also tie heavily into the current direction of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you bet your buns I'm going to explain how. First and foremost, the sets of bands are similar in that they both provide their wielders incredible powers like flight, strength, energy, projection, the super person works, if you will. Secondly, the Quantum Bands are believed to be legendary weapons known to the Kree as the Power Bands of Rin, which actually were the prototypes for the NEGA-BANDS. So this would imply that somewhere throughout their history, the Kree Empire created the Quantum Bands, lost them to be found by Stark Industries, and then subsequently created the NEGA-BANDS. Now, the next similarity between the bands is the most significant. Remember way earlier in the video when I explained how the Quantum Bands draw their power from the Quantum Zone? Well, the NEGA-BANDS draw their power from, you guessed it, the Negative Zone. Dun dun dun. I'm not sure why I did that, but it felt dramatic and serious. Anywho, for those unfamiliar with the Negative Zone, is the infamous dimension that not only gave Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four, their superpowers, but trapped them inside it as well. And what movie just so happens to be coming out as part of the MCU's Phase 6 right before Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, and the Avengers Secret Wars? You guessed it again, Fantastic Four, boom! This is fascinating to say the least because ever since the announcement of the Fantastic Four movie, the widespread fan theory is that the quartet have been trapped in the Negative Zone this whole time, since like the 60s or 70s, and they will re-emerge in modern times. Lastly, the Negative Zone is also home to one of the most evil and hardcore supervillains in Marvel history, Annihilus. Annihilus is also heavily involved in the Annihilation story arc from the comics, which just so happens to be where Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 drew tons of inspiration from, like the donning of the new blue and red Guardian suits and the introduction of Phyla-Vell as a member of the Guardians. See, it all comes full circle around here. In conclusion, what I'm proposing is that in the MCU, the Quantum Bands and the NEGA-BANDS will be connected cosmically, and so will the Quantum Realm and the Negative Zone. Perhaps this notion of Guardians 3 will be the last time we see the team for a while is not as accurate as we all once thought. Not only is Adam Warlock a prominent character in Marvel, but Phyla is low-key slipping under the radar as well. I know she doesn't currently have either sets of Kree artifacts yet, but in the comics, she is one of only 2 characters to have harnessed the powers of both. The Quantum Bands being connected to the Quantum Realm could be the catalyst in tying basically everything from Phase 2 up until now together, whereas the NEGA-BANDS and the Negative Zone could be a major focal point moving forward, Phase 5 and on. Perhaps the same way signals were received by Cassie Lang from the Quantum Realm and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, signals have been sent and are about to be received to and from the Negative Zone as well. Is it possible that during the Marvels, we see the origins of the quantum realm and NEGA-BANDS and how they've somehow been at play this whole time? I mean, the quantum realm seemingly exists everywhere in the universe, right? It's not exclusive to Earth. It's accessible via shrinking down to beyond microscopic levels, if I'm not mistaken. And with how it's become a great factor in both the Thanos and Kang the Conqueror big bad story arcs, it's very likely that the negative zone could be next. If the comics are anything to go by, not only does the negative zone exist parallel to the universe that Earth exists in, but it's bound to pop up sooner rather than later, right? You know, I'll let you take the evidence that I've provided and decide for yourself. And there you have it. The Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 mid-credits scene more than likely, for surely, yeah, probably alluded to the quantum bands and maybe even the NEGA-BANDS. Let us know what you think down below. Don't miss out on any quantum comic content.